Well, the ongoing power crisis in the country and recent hot weather have added to problems around water supply in Gauteng. Reservoirs running low. Rand Water has placed 30% restrictions in a number of areas. As a result, the outflow has also been reduced. Julius Kleynhans is with OUTA speaking to us today as the Water Minister. Julius is meeting with water authorities in Gauteng today. I wonder how much of this could have been predicted and indeed prevented, given that weather getting hotter has been a long-standing warning, for example, as far as environmentalists are concerned. When you look at the energy crisis, it's not a new one in South Africa.
No, not at all. We've seen this happen some years ago already. This is not the first time that we've seen water shedding, for instance, in the city of Johannesburg and Gauteng region. But yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we need to worry about that hasn't really been mentioned is the Lesotho Islands Phase 2 water project that's still not producing water to Gauteng. And that was supposed to provide water to Gauteng already in 2018. So, this is going to become a new norm, and the water crisis will certainly hit us in the near future as demand increases in the economic capital of the country. Whilst, our demand fluctuates. We've seen a lot of water losses. In fact, a non-revenue water report, the most recent one was published in 2012. And that already indicated that the city of Johannesburg, as an example, had water losses of around 40%. So that means water is lost due to leakages and, so there's definitely a maintenance factor to it, but also a lack of proper demand management for future supply. Every election that comes about, we see a large influx of residents coming in. But not only that, as people seek job opportunities and urbanization, expanding of the cities occur, we don't necessarily see the infrastructure that has to start providing water to those communities.
And if the warnings were sounded for Gauteng as recently, well, as long ago, in fact, as 10 years ago, is it unreasonable to expect the people in charge to have been able to make plans ahead of this emergency now, this crisis?
No, not at all. I think the predictions and the plans for future demand and supply was in around 2005, 2008 already. So we've seen a significant lack of additional development and future supply development, bigger piping infrastructure, more reservoirs, and these kind of things developing. So there should be no excuse. In fact, the only people that should take account is those who are in charge of building and maintaining these systems. And it's really a big issue. We've seen so much political interference from the Department of Water and Sanitation's point of view all the way down to city management. And one has to just make sure that that the Department of Water and Sanitation is supposed to ensure that there's bulk water supply like the Lesotho Islands water project. So currently our dams are full and everyone's saying it's not a crisis. Yes, the Department of Water and Sanitation is correct in that, but that's only for now. If there's any droughts in Lesotho, we are directly affected. The same with droughts in South Africa. But the municipalities are in charge of ensuring that water gets to the consumers. So everyone's got a role to play and needs to step up and take accountability for it. You cannot point the finger to consumers, but that said, we all have our role to play. There's restrictions, so we need to respect that and not necessarily wet our gardens as much. And it's difficult, especially if you see with the heat wave that we've witnessed, that people do consume more water and try to cool off in an instant. So, it is a bit of a difficult one from that point of view, but there should be no excuse.
Well, the demand, or at least the request from the water officials for people to use water sparingly, the most recent one from the city of Tshwane on Saturday, they don't seem to be very well received because consumption remains quite high. Is it that people don't understand the severity of the situation, or that it's been poorly explained? Because when you read the statements from the likes of Joburg Water and Rand Water, you can get confused actually about what this means in reality.
Yeah, I think we've seen, I don't think the information that was distributed is really authentic and clear enough. It's almost passing the buck to the consumer, and people are really tired and fed up. We've all had been witnessing power shortages. Now all of a sudden you've got water restrictions, yet you still have to pay. In the same month or two ago, there was increases in tariffs and rates. So I think communities are just a bit tired of government saying things and always passing the burden on to them. So it's difficult to persuade them otherwise. And in fact, I think the worst thing is because there's a lack of accountability in government. How does government have the audacity to go and enforce it on consumers at the moment? So, but I do believe, as soon as we start seeing government enforcing the law, we might see a difference. But that's a very sensitive matter, and I don't think that politicians are in a position to try and push that kind of narrative. So, it's a difficult situation to be in, but it's been inevitable. And we are sitting on a water ticking time bomb in this country, in general, not only in Gauteng, but the day zeros are real. And day zero is very real in the future because of the Lesotho Islands Water Project not giving us water.
Well, Professor Anthony Turton, in various interviews, and he spoke to us as well just last night, spoke about the lack of an updated water resource strategy because of various problems within the department that's responsible for water provision in this country. The lack of that plan, why would the department be allowed to continue to go on as normal when there's such a serious issue around water provision and indeed possibly insecurity?
Absolutely. That's documents need to be updated probably every 5 years at least. And Professor Turton's spot on. It's very important that these plans and strategies be developed for future demand and supply that both look after consumer and population demand and increases as well as economic growth. South Africa is a water scarce country. If you look at Gauteng, or all the major cities in the world, they're always built on a major water source. However, if you look at Gauteng, the Vaal River is not a major water source, and it's mostly supplied by the Lesotho, which is a different country. So it's a sensitive subject, but it's very real. And without water, we cannot survive. In fact, it's a basic human right. And the biggest problem that we've seen in South Africa is not the lack of plans, but the lack of execution. The Department of Water and Sanitation, specifically from a ministerial point of view, and the minister is the custodian of our water. Just because of the changes and the political interferences under the tenure of Nomvula Mokonyane, and those tenures have been so destructive to our water sector, where very scarce resources and funding have actually been stolen, in corruption and all that. So a lot of plans haven't been executed. So now we're sitting in a position where we are far behind with the execution of future demand plans to be implemented, and we don't have the funds for it anymore. And the problem is, the more you delay these implementations of new bulk water infrastructure like piping and dams and the maintenance thereof, the more the cost becomes. So where the Lesotho Islands Water Project of 2018 was supposed to give us water already in 2018, that would have cost about 17 billion rand. Now they're saying that it's going to provide water around 2028 only, which is a decade later, and it's probably going to cost us about 30 billion rand. And guess who pays for it? You and I. So it's ridiculous. And if government cannot do its job, it's time for them to start getting people in the private sector who can.
Julius Kleynhans from OUTA, good to speak to you, sir.